Well, that was embarrassing. So, let's go back to this. Okay. So I forgot to turn on my mic. So I'll quickly go over my whole spiel. As far as the breakdowns for the previous issues, I have them filmed. I just have not finished editing them yet. This will be the format in the future for the breakdowns and everything, where I live stream it and I break everything down and I do what I can. Because I now have the hardware for it. As you can see, it's different backdrop. The lighting's not as good as it usually is. And the reason for that is, I can probably do a little bit of adjusting. But the reason for that is that I am changing sets up a little bit. I am not doing things like I was before. Where did I find those settings? So properties. Oh, whoa. Hold on. There we go. But yes, I guess that'll work for now. So this will be the format from now on. Speaking of that, there will be changes going on. What? Okay, there we go. There will be stuff changing here soon. I'm really excited about it. I'll be talking more about it in the end of the year video that I do every year. Won't be talking about a whole lot of Robotech news in that video, just because I covered so much of the Robotech news over the entirety of the year that doing a year in review for the news, that I'm not doing that. But my end of the year video, I will be discussing some big changes happening. I'm excited about it. I hope you guys can be excited about it too. Now, let's go ahead and get to it. There we go. So, the issue begins with with a battle in the middle of a battle. Rick has clearly joined the forces now, and is currently battling in the ROBOTECH we all know and love him flying. However, things are not great still. Come on, there you go. Because he nearly crashes into Roy, because his eyesight is clearly not better. Now, we will be going more in depth with that a couple pages from now, they'll be discussing it, and we'll talk about that more in depth. But his eyesight is clearly not okay right now, and he nearly flies right into Roy. And Roy is not happy about it whatsoever. He realizes that Rick is not fit for duty, and tells Rick that he needs to head home because there's something clearly wrong with him. He's clearly not ready to fight yet, and used the whole "I told you so" kind of thing. Like, he's like, I knew you weren't ready. So Rick agrees with him that maybe it would be best, even though they are currently against their backs right now, outnumbered and outgunned. But he agrees it might be for the best that he heads home. So he flies back to the ship. And that's where we get our first look at Captain Lisa. Now, the Bridge Bunnies are giving her all the status reports, such as hull integrity and shields and damages and all that stuff. And, one of them makes a note. I think it was Sammy? No, it was Claudia. Claudia makes a note that it's just been relentless. They've just been hammered. And Lisa's like, yeah, I know. 5 attacks in 3 days. So there were 2 days where they were attacked twice in that day, in that time period. And that's rough, and that's actually in line with the show. In the show, they mention how often they're being attacked in the episode Transformation, which we're already past that point, but it's the same thing where they just can't handle it because it's constant fighting. It's constant. It is constant, just on the ropes, seat of your pants. What are we going to do now to fix things? Now, as far as the Zentradi side, Britai makes the note that Britai makes the note that he doesn't want them destroyed. He wants them whipped and beaten, is the term he used. Which that makes sense for what he's trying to do. He's trying to he's trying to capture the SDF-1, and he's just trying to break their spirit. He is trying to make the morale so low that they just give up. And then they can swoop in, take back the SDF-1, and go their merry little war ways. And that's just what he's trying to do. He's trying to break their spirits. he's trying to just take the fight out of him. Now, as you can see here from my my little edit to the page, that's actually a reference in case you haven't watched, or not watched, in case you haven't listened to the RoboSkull podcast. Long before this issue came out, they just finished the Macross saga, and they've been making jokes about Chiron being like, "Oh, my hair," and this is luxurious hair. It's fantastic. I can't believe how that joke from that podcast kind of translated to what they were doing in the comics. I'm sure that was already the design they were going with ahead of time, but I love the idea that they had the same idea that the guys doing the RoboSkull podcast had. So, next up, we get the view of Mars base in the comics at the very end of the page, and I kind of want to talk about it because there's already been so many changes in this comic series, but this is. And I've been okay with most of the changes. I know some people haven't, but I personally have been okay with some of the changes. But I love the idea of their version of the Mars base. I like that rendition of it, because the one in the show, which is the one at the bottom, in case you didn't notice, it just kind of looks like, for lack of a better term, a clusterfuck. Like, what is going on there? I don't get it. What's a military base should be set up better than that. So I find that interesting. So I do like the design for the base, because it's got the circle it's got a nice circular design, which is efficient, and it's not everything everywhere. It's got a centralized location with many areas connecting to it, so you can easily access whatever area you're wanting to access from just about anywhere. Very efficient design. I really do enjoy that change that they had. But Britai makes the plan that they're going to want to, if they keep pushing, the SDF-1 is going to have to make a stop at Mars base. It's only logical because it's only logical because Mars base is where they know there's supplies at Mars base for the SDF-1, and they know that there's going to be a certain amount of desire to be somewhere familiar, somewhere that they know is safe, and kind of taking advantage of that idea of a haven. So he sends Warlord Chiron. In this, apparently, Warlord is Chiron's title, which is interesting. Because I believe in the show it's Lord Bretai, Lord Exodor, and Lord Dolza. I don't know if Chiron was Lord, but it wasn't Warlord. I know that for sure. It was not Warlord. That's an interesting choice. I'm not opposed to it, because if you haven't watched the show, I don't want to get too spoilery if you haven't watched it, for the comics, if you haven't watched the show already. But if you have watched the show, you know about the Zentradi tendencies, you know about that. So Warlord is a good choice for them. That would be within the ideals that we know about the Zentradi. So now, whether or not that's below Lord, or whether, you know, that's still a mystery, is the ranking structure of the Zentradi is a little bit off. But we know that Chiron is Warlord. Roy knows the name of the Zentradi. He nearly blurts it out in a meeting between him, Lisa, and Claudia, and then he stops himself. It just refers to them as the aliens, which is interesting because clearly he's comfortable with them enough saying that it might be something that he knows is it might be something that he knows is knowledge to them, but at the same time he's not, because if it wasn't knowledge to them, they would have been pressing him about it. What? 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 You just said Z. What was it? The Z. And they don't press him on it. So it seems to be knowledge that they also know. So I'm just wondering, this secret information that they've been providing us in the comics. They're talking about how, they keep referencing this mission, but in like hushed tones, where you know that they know what they're talking about, even when they're in the presence of someone else that was there. They don't talk about it openly, which is an interesting concept. Is that exclusively for us, the viewer, or is there actually a feeling out there that is there a feeling out there that the Zentradi, or that the humans can't talk about the Zentradi or anything they learned in that trip to the SDF-1? Is there this feeling that even if you know what happened there, it's a taboo subject? That's the word I'm looking for. Is it taboo to talk about this even when you have someone that would know about that situation? So I find that interesting. Like I said, I'm curious whether it's taboo or whether it's just the way the writers are doing it just so they don't give us too much information, but at the same time indicate who knows and who doesn't know about this situation. Oh, sorry. My work schedule, they changed the hours I work, and they changed up my shifts, and I'm having trouble adjusting. Now with this discussion, it almost feels like, at least on Roy's end, and I kind of got that impression from the body language of the Bridge Bunnies as well, but they were still showing their respect, but their body language indicated that it was not as there wasn't as much respect for Lisa as captain as there was for Glowful, based on the way they were carrying themselves and the way they kind of were just hands on hips, or crossing the arms, stuff like that. The body language indicates that there's not a whole lot of respect for Lisa as captain, and with the way Roy's talking, it almost feels like he doesn't have much respect for her either, just the way he's talking, counteracting what she's saying by saying, hey, this plan is ridiculous because the aliens are likely to attack us while we're on the planet. I get what you're saying. We need to stabilize morale for the troops. We need the artillery. We need the medical supplies. We need the food supplies. But the aliens could easily attack us, and then we're stuck. And he makes a good point, and she makes a good point as to why to do it. But she kind of puts her foot down after he, counteracts her, and she's like, it's a risk that's worth taking. It's the only thing that we can do logically that could really help us. And like I said, both have very good points, about the Zentradi attacking, about the reasons they should go to Mars base. But after she puts her foot down, again, with body language, Roy's kind of going like this, and he's like, you don't have to replace him in one day. Like, the body language and the way he's talking almost down to her, I don't think she commands a lot of respect at this point. And later in this issue, you'll see that it's kind of warranted, the lack of respect.